I just remember waking up strapped to a stretcher in a CT scan machine. It was pitch black, and I saw a red dot.
Today on the show, we have former college football player with Arkansas Tech University, Dr. Brandon Wright, is up next. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. Before we get into today's conversation, a quick reminder that the Fifth Quarter podcast is now available on Audible, and also that Michael will be on vacation for the remainder of December. We both want to thank each and every one of you who have taken the time to comment, like, and share our posts. We are so appreciative of everyone's time and wonderful words of encouragement and the insight into what you like about the show. And just a small tidbit, we get comments from people that are athletes, former athletes, and non athletes, which I think is really great. A huge thank you to everyone who's taken that 30 seconds to leave us a review on Apple. Those reviews really help our show and get found by others, and also let us know what you find interesting. So let's get into today's show. Our guest is a former college football player at Arkansas Tech University and the current director of the University of Alabama at Birmingham Career Center. Welcome to the show, Dr. Brandon Wright. Hi,
Awesome.
Brandon.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. For you listeners out there, I wanted to share how Brandon and I met, which we've never met in person. I found you on LinkedIn, and I want to give a shout out to Cortez Washington, who's with the University of Memphis Career Center. I believe he had commented on something that you had posted, and I saw your profile, and I was looking to connect with more college professionals. And so I reached out to you, and then you posted about your NFL resume. And I was like, oh my God, he would be a great person to have on the show. So I thank you so much for taking the time out today to do this. Um, I want to go ahead and get into a little bit about where you grew up and where you're from and kind of how you got started as a young kid.
Yeah, well, first off, thanks to Cortez. I know me and Cortez are good friends, been working together for a long time. So kudos to Cortez Washington at the University of Memphis, bridging the gap for me. So, long story short, I was raised in St. Charles, DeWitt, Arkansas area by my grandparents um, from birth till about 10 years old.
Mhm.
So I spent a lot of time in the rice fields and the bean fields with my grandfather on a farm. He was a rice farmer. And so, no neighbors walking up and down dirt roads. So yeah, my grandpa was the man for me. So and then I moved to Grandview, Missouri with my mother and my four other siblings. That's a suburb of Kansas City.
Right.
And it was there that I was introduced to flag football, and then spent a couple years in Grandview. And then my mom moved us to inner city Kansas City, where I went to Westport High School, um, from about sixth grade. I went to Westport Middle School from
Right.
sixth grade, middle school, and then high school as well. And then the junior year of my high school tenure, I moved back to Arkansas, but to Stuttgart, Arkansas is where my dad lives, and moved with my dad August of my junior
Right.
year, and graduated from Stuttgart, Arkansas. So
Let's pause right there. So
yeah,
I want to go back to you as a young boy, and what was it like on a daily basis for people that didn't grow up in the country? Grew up in the country, but I didn't have to work on a farm. But what was it like as a kid to live and work on a rice farm?
yeah. I mean, it was peaceful. That's what I can remember. I mean, it was fun. The things that I can remember are, going fishing. I
Right.
mean, we had our own pond, so you just go fishing, you go hunting. My grandpa at Arkansas County is known for ducks, so it's like the duck
Oh,
hunting
okay.
capital of the world. So went hunting all the time. He hunt anything. We ate everything, rabbit,
Sure.
turtle. But it was, I mean, I spent a lot of time with him on the tractor, 14-hour days. I couldn't say very much because I wouldn't be able to come back.
Right.
So whether it was tractors or combines and things like that, but just up and down the road, I mean, it was so peaceful. I was with
Right.
my grandma and two of my other cousins as well. And we just spent a lot of time in the field, running through rice fields and running up and down dirt roads, like catching turtles and,
Yeah.
stuff like that, having pet chickens that are there one day and are not there the next day.
So did you understand why they weren't there? I never understood that when I was
N-
little.
No, I did not. But
Yeah.
I knew we ate a lot of chicken, that was for sure. No, but I mean, my grandma, she stayed at home. She would cook every meal,
Right.
so it was a great time.
What do you think are what's a couple of lessons that you think followed you from that experience into adulthood?
Yeah, I think I never saw my grandpa complain about his work.
Right.
I mean, long hours, I never heard him that I can recall
Right.
complain about his work. I'm not saying every day was a good day,
Right.
but to me, he just exemplified hard work. He took care of his great grandbabies
Right.
and he just did it. And I think another thing too was just patience. I
Mhm.
mean, he worked those fields and we just had to wait. I mean, I
Right.
would be the impatient kid looking for the grain, looking for it, the sprout, and he would tell us that we just have to wait. And just patience as well. I was taught out there, but then also, I just understand that there's a process to everything, right? There's a season to plant,
Right.
and then there's a season to harvest. But in between all that, there's a lot of work. And so
Right.
those are a few lessons that I take from him.
Which I think is important because a lot of times I think people are so focused on the end result of something that they forget about appreciating the process of it and just understanding and living through the process and taking advantage of that. And so let's talk about when did you start playing football? You mentioned flag football. Had you played any type of sports before that?
So I moved with my mom. I was in fourth grade. So what are you, 10 years old?
Right.
So I moved from the country to a suburb of Kansas City. And I would just remember getting this little hand sheet at school inviting us to play flag football for like the YMCA,
Right.
Kansas City Chief YMCA. I brought it home fourth grade year or early, and my mom was like, "We're gonna see what your grades are like before." I'm like, "Mom, just let me play." And she's like, "We're gonna see what your grades are like, and then we'll talk about it." Long story short, she signed me up anyway, and I was hooked. I mean, I had never, I don't remember watching football before
Right.
that.
But you knew what it was, right?
I
No.
mean, as a fourth grader, I mean, I'm sure I watched some Super Bowls and things like
Sure.
that, but I had never played anything organized, and but I just knew I wanted to play flag football, and well, I knew I wanted to do that when they sent that sheet home. I just didn't know it would take me as far as it did.
So let's talk a little bit about that. What was it about flag football or football in general that just piqued your curiosity?
Well, I think I found out that I don't know, I think I found out that I could run. Like, I just remember being able to outrun everybody, and actually, football not being a hard sport for me.
Right.
Um, and the team aspect of it, I can recall my first like flag football teammates and who they were. I can remember the little parties that we had, celebrating the end of your season. And I just loved everything about that. and long story, like my mom, she wanted me to play all these other sports then, because my coach, he was like, Brandon's really good. He should try baseball. He should try.
So, and how old were you at that moment?
I was 10, 11.
And they could already see your talent.
Yeah, they,
That's pretty impressive.
so I did flag football 2 years with the same coach, and then I started tackle football. And going into sixth grade, my mom moved us to inner city Kansas
Right.
City, but that was South Suburban, kind of like Pop Warner.
Mhm.
And so my mom still had to drive me from Kansas City to Grandview for practice,
Wow.
but ultimately my coaches would come and get me from inner city Kansas City to bring me to practice. Practice, I think I sixth, seventh, eighth grade tackle football. They would they would come get me and make sure I was there.
That's
And
pretty crazy. I mean,
yeah,
that's really impressive that they would do that. What was the culture shock like moving into the inner city of Kansas City?
it was yeah. So keep in mind, a couple years before that, I was in the country.
Mhm.
So
Exactly.
moving to the inner city was definitely it was a culture shock. I mean, moving from Arkansas to the Kansas City, you're going to get a lot of snow.
Right.
I mean, not as much grass. I mean, everybody liked basketball in Kansas City. But I mean, everybody loved the Jayhawks. Um, but it was tough. The schools were not to up to snuff. We went to metal detectors every day. We
Wow.
had to take our shoes off, get your bag searched. I think my middle school and high school changed names every year I was there. Like it was a charter,
Wow.
magnet, and then finally, I think in early, probably 2007, 8, they lost the accreditation for the school and it shut down. But I mean, I saw some of everything. School was not a high, it was almost just like a daycare to
Wow.
keep us off of the streets. My
Right.
brother got involved in gangs and went to juvenile detention center. I had a lot of friends involved in street activity. And actually, where I grew up, they wouldn't let me participate in any of that. Like drug dealers would pay me for my grades, Sandy. They
You
would,
know, I've heard some of that about kids in Memphis. I actually
yep.
have. And, w- how did that make you feel at that time?
I mean, you wanted to we were out with I mean they lived right across the street from us, so they knew when I was coming from football practice. I had brothers that they would let hang with them. I got two other brothers. One of my brothers they let hang with them. My other brother, they always wanted him to go to work, and for me they would just be like, no, you focus on ball. Like literally they would say, I can. So Cindy, I'll tell you this: when I moved from Kansas City to back to Stuttgart my junior year, there was a guy who was involved in gang activity that was watching me midday, and I know his name, but he said he watched me as I was about to leave. It was like midday.
Right.
My dad was there, and he said, if you move to Arkansas and you don't go to college, you're stupid, basically. This man has never gone to college. He didn't even graduate high school. But he said, if you
Wow.
go to Arkansas and you don't go to college, you're stupid. And that stuck with me. And it was just like they they were looking out for me, right? They paid me for my grades. They would ask me stuff about football, about track and field, but they would not allow for me to do anything else. And this is literally right across the street from
Sure.
where I grew
Sure.
up. So I'm grateful for sure. Because
That's
didn't everybody didn't have that type of,
no.
kind of,
Have you ever thought about why they saw that in you and maybe not your brother or maybe not other kids?
yeah, definitely. I mean, you think about it a lot. And I think for them, I don't know. Maybe it was just I'm a spiritual guy, so
Right.
maybe it was some sort of spirit that they saw because we had a basketball court right outside the house.
Sure.
They knew how serious I was playing basketball. We would race up and down the street. They knew how serious I was with that. They knew how serious I was with football. And like they just, I mean, they wouldn't let me engage in drugs, none of that, Sandy. And this is like the peer pressure to fit in at that point in time was just like, but they wouldn't allow it.
That is extremely remarkable and very, I would say, lucky for you,
Oh
but
yeah, for sure.
just very remarkable. So you said you played basketball too. What made you choose football as opposed to basketball?
Yeah, so my stepdad was a really good basketball player in the state of Georgia. So when
Right.
I moved to my mom, he bought a basketball court. And I'm out here. I love every sport really at this point in my life. So
Sure.
I'm trying to shoot. I'm about to break the backboard. So he has to teach me how to shoot. He has to teach me how to do layouts and not, be super physical. But um, he was a really good basketball player. And I actually, I did well in basketball. I just was athletic. But I think there came a point my 10th grade year
Hmm.
um, when I learned that I could dunk the ball. So I'm in 10th grade, what, 16 years old?
How tall are you at that time?
Oh, I'm probably just 5'7",
Wow.
5'8". So I learned that I can dunk the ball. And I go up to dunk the ball. I'm just trying to show out at this point, right?
Sure.
I go up, dunk the ball, and I come down on my one of my toes, and I break my toe, right? And I just remember my mom taking me to the doctor, and they're saying, "Oh, he's gonna have to miss." This was like in early August.
Sure.
And they're like, "Oh, he's gonna have to miss some fall camp. He's not gonna be able to play football." And I was like, "I'm quitting basketball. I'm never playing.
Although
I'm
you can
never
get
gonna
hurt.
play basketball." That was it, Sandy. I'm like, if I gotta miss football because of basketball, I'm not playing basketball again.
Okay, that's that and I guess, some people just it just hits them, differently each sport. When do you think you really fell in love with football?
That was ooh. I mean, so I moved. Football in Kansas City was a little different than when I moved to Stuttgart, Arkansas. Stuttgart, Arkansas was in the Delta of Arkansas, and it was when I remember moving there, and the first kind of home game, they had people tailgating. I mean, this town probably got 10,000 people, and it's surrounded by rice fields and
Yes,
like
yes.
so there were people tailgating. They had a pep rally. I remember we got out of school early. I'm like, we get out of school early for football.
And
I
this is
remember,
high school football, right?
yeah, I
Yeah.
remember we get grades for football practice. I'm like, we get a grade for football practice, and literally moving to Stuttgart, Arkansas, and having success. I mean, I moved down there and I started at running back, and and literally my junior year, I think I cracked my hip my junior year, so I was out for 8 weeks. But seeing it and then coming back so I only had one solid year at Stuttgart, and they had won 4 or 5 state championships a couple years before I got there, so they had a program already. And yeah, I came back my senior year and was able to start on defense and enjoy a 10-game winning streak and just going on football visits and college visits. And
When did the college recruiting start for you?
yeah, it started basically it started my senior year. That was all that I had because I cracked my hip my junior year, and nobody looks at anybody in Kansas City at that point,
Right.
inner city. So, but it was also, I think, at some point in Kansas City, I learned that my dad played for the Razorbacks. And my dad played as a linebacker for Arkansas
So he
between
played
84.
basketball and football?
no, my pops, he was a
Oh,
football player and
okay.
track.
Okay.
So, yeah, he played for Arkansas Razorbacks. And I was like, if I want to play football, I need to be around my dad. So I asked him if I could move with him to Stuttgart, and he was like, yeah, we can help you out. And then that's when I learned my grandpa also played football in college in Missouri as well. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
That's pretty cool. Three generations there. So your senior year, you're getting recruited. What made you choose Arkansas Tech?
Yeah, so I just remember, so we got all these visits. I went on visits to the University of Arkansas, went on the visits to Arkansas Tech, another Division II school, University of Arkansas Monticello, and I just remember having a lot of conversations with Arkansas State University and the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, and I actually thought Arkansas State was going to offer me because they talked to me a lot, and probably the same week of signing, they ghosted me.
Wow.
And I went to Arkansas Tech, and they offered me on the spot. It's Division II, so they offered me a scholarship on the spot when I went up there. So that felt really good. And once again, I only had 1 year of
Sure.
football, honestly. So after I actually signed, Arkansas State circled back around during summer camp. So imagine this, Sandy. So I'm at summer camp at Arkansas Tech, right?
Right.
Freshman year.
Right.
I get a call from the coach that ghosted me back in February, right?
Sure.
Hey, Brandon, you got some time? I say, yes, sir. What's going on? He says, hey, man, we got a little room for you if you still want to be a Arkansas State. I think it was Red Indians at that point
Right.
at that time. And I called my dad, and he's like, "Son, you're not gonna do that. You're gonna stay right where you
Right.
are." So they called and offered me like a gray shirt scholarship, but my dad explained that somebody got hurt,
Yeah.
and then they called you, so you're gonna stay where you are, son. And I didn't argue with that man. So
So it's interesting for everybody out there. When I was doing the prep work, the Arkansas Tech football team is known as the Wonder Boys.
yep,
And what are the girls basketball team known
Golden
as?
Suns.
Golden Suns. So I found that quite fascinating because I was just like, why is he called a Wonder Boy? And then I
Yep.
found that. So, um, you know, part of the thing I love about these podcasts is we learn so many things about different things that we didn't really know about. And I love that it's expanding the education for everybody out there. What was it like going from high school? So you've gone back and forth. You've gone from Arkansas to Kansas City, back to Arkansas, and now you're going into college. And what was that transition like for you?
So I like to tell people, I mean, I think I think when I moved with my dad, I was 16, 17. I was 17. That was the first time I had my own bed.
Wow.
Yep. So you go to college and you um have a dorm room. So my dad drops me off, and he waits like 15 minutes, and he doesn't help me do anything. He's like, he's dropping you off for camp, and he's like, "Are you good?" I say, "Yes, sir." He said, "All right, I'm gone." Put my whole room and stuff like that together. And you got meetings early. As soon as you get dropped
Sure.
off, you have to start having football meetings. But honestly, the adjustment in terms of football, I have been working out. So I have been running, I have been lifting. They sent a workout that all the freshmen needed to
Right.
do. I did it to the T, and I showed up, and I was ready to go. And honestly, it wasn't it wasn't anything, it wasn't too difficult. I've been very blessed. Let me just say that.
Just looking from the outside, I would think that growing up on that farm and doing that work also put you in a spot where you knew how to follow the process. And I think, sometimes I look at, we've had other guests on here that have talked about, what they lacked in growing up and how that affected them later and how hard it was. And just yesterday, I was talking with another, he was a basketball player, and he talked about how he lost his way in college because he got so caught up in the accolades and the applause and the attention, and he let his training go. Um, what was it like that first time you walked on the field as a player and played in your first game for Arkansas Tech?
Oh, it was, it was pretty amazing. I'm not gonna lie. I think you realize that I think I could just remember the wake up call that I was in college. So we're in camp. And I think every football player has this, and every athlete has this wake up call, like you're in college now.
Right.
So that I'm in college and we're in practice and I'm doing what I need to do. I'm on scout team on defense, trying to get offense a really good look. And think I'm pretty fast, think I'm pretty strong. So I just remember meeting this guy named Tim Childers in the hole. And he is a short, stout guy. He probably felt like he was 1% body fat, but he was probably 199 pounds of solid muscle. And
Wow.
we hit head to head and he ran straight over me. And I just remember thinking, wow, I haven't felt that type of ever, right?
Ever.
But that just was like a wake up call to me when I got to college, and that I needed to make sure that I kept working and kept getting
Sure.
better and stay focused. So, but that first time stepping out on that field, it feels good, to know that you're worthy of scholarship,
Hmm.
that you're worthy of wearing the green and gold. So it was great.
Let's talk about your mindset when you were going into college. Were you thinking, like, did you have any idea or any thoughts as to what you were going to do after college? As a
No,
freshman, yeah,
no,
most
no.
of
To
you.
be honest, Sandy, it was either I was going to the Marines or
Wow.
I was about to play football. So I met with the Marine recruiter up until I reported to camp, and they were
What?
trying to persuade me
Why the
to do,
Marines?
huh?
Why the Marines?
That was the recruiter that got my phone number and came to Stuttgart, Arkansas, and met with me every week in the library. And he tried to convince me to that I could do both. And at that point, I didn't want to go to Iraq. Like
Well,
I just didn't
sure.
want to do that.
Yeah.
So I stayed away from that. But to me, when I got into school, I knew I was going to major in business. A funny story, I was like, I'm going to major in entrepreneurship. I didn't even, my first meeting with the advisor, I'm a freshman. I think
Hmm.
I know what I'm going to do. And he's like, okay, what are you thinking about? I said, I think I'm a major in entrepreneurship because in my mind, every football player, national football player they operate like their own business. So you need to know your own accounting, you need to know your own marketing. Um,
And can I just say that I think most athletes going into freshman year don't think like that. They're
well,
just
yeah,
like,
I don't know.
I
Now
just
that
want to
I'm
play
thinking
in.
this, yeah,
Yeah.
I just knew that I needed to have some basic business skills.
Hmm.
So, but he said, son, we don't have entrepreneurship. You can major in management and marketing. It still baffles my mind to this day that I signed that scholarship without looking at the academic catalog. Like I didn't even look at the majors that they had there.
Everybody does that.
Yeah.
Everybody does that.
So yeah, I majored in marketing and management and said, okay, I'm going to go to the NFL. And after 3 years in the NFL, I'm gonna retire and then I'm gonna go into business for myself. And that was my plan. Honestly, that was my
That's a
plan.
good plan though. I mean, really it is.
I just figured I'd still be young. I'd be making the league minimum, so I'd be a millionaire because I was gonna live broke. And then and and then I can go off and kind of do some things in business. So
I think that's how did your mindset change as you went through college, or did it change? Did you still have that same plan in
no, I
mind?
think that it got the closer you get to senior year, the more serious you understand, like especially at D2, like you see some guys go to the NFL,
Right.
but it's much more difficult. Um, and so you see a lot more guys drop down from D1 to D2. Like I played with a whole lot of guys from
Sure.
Ole Miss, Mississippi State, like Arkansas, they transferred down to D2. And but making it out of D2 to the league was just a much more arduous task. And so I think you realize that you really got to put up solid numbers year in and year out. So I
Hmm.
started working a little bit more on making sure I was all conference, making sure I was preseason all conference and things like that. And honestly, trying to make sure you stay on the field because that concussion almost took me out of there. And then,
Let's talk about that.
yeah,
You got a concussion what when you were a sophomore,
yeah,
and I read you what you had written. You were out for 3 hours
yeah,
unconscious. Tell
yeah.
us about like how did that happen, and then what was your mindset and recovery after that?
Yeah, so it's one of those times you'll never forget. I can remember what was like before it was like early third quarter and um
Who were y'all playing?
Central Missouri State.
Okay.
Central Missouri State. Yep. Never forget that. And I just remember colliding with the running back. And so they were in the red zone and I'm a young outside linebacker. I go up, try to make a solid tackle on a knee and his knees are churning. His knee hit me in the
Oh God.
temple. And I went out and I just remember waking up strapped to a stretcher in a CT scan machine. It was pitch black, and I saw a red dot. And the first words out of my mouth was, "Where am I?" And I just remember the lady's voice saying, hey, Brandon, be still. We're taking pictures of your brain. You've been unconscious for 3 hours. We
Wow.
need you to stay still for about 5 more minutes."
Hmm.
And I can just remember as soon as she started talking, my head started throbbing.
Oh.
And they finally got done and they, kind of machined me out. And I just remember not having my jersey on. They had cut my jersey all the way off of me. My helmet was still on. So my helmet had been on for 3 hours and I was strapped to a stretcher. And I took my helmet off and I just remember my athletic trainer was there, my head coach was there, my mom was there, and they all crying. Um, So that was the first and last game my mom came to.
Oh my
So
God, that was her first game?
in college, yep, my first, yeah,
Oh,
yep,
bless her heart.
yeah,
So let me ask you this quick question. You wake up and you come to that, they tell you what's happened and everything. Did you ever have the mindset that you needed to quit?
no,
Why not? I would think if I got hurt that badly, and you already had what a cracked hip when you were in high
yep,
school, I would have thought that the danger was too much.
yeah. My dissertation research is based on this. There's several reasons why I just never, I started playing tackle football in sixth grade, so um you kind of just get accustomed to the ailments of the game, jammed
Right.
fingers. Like this
Oh.
finger does not stretch out. That's as straight as it goes. I got a screw in my wrist. That's as far back as my wrist goes. I have a
Oh,
screw from
wow.
football from college. Yeah. So broke my wrist in college. Um,
So it was really just another
yeah.
knock on you. That was
Yeah.
it. It
So I
just
think I mean, in terms of quitting, it just makes you, for a lot of us, it don't make us think about quitting the game because I mean, it's something about it. In terms of the love that you gain for it over time, the sweat, the tears, the joy, um, you just get used to it. And I think some people would rather, um, some people would rather, you know, give up a lot of things other than try to give
Right.
up that game. So
And it's a little bit of a gamble every game you go out there to see if, what's going to happen. And I think it's that competitive streak also, just against yourself and everything else.
you don't want to be seen as soft in football ever.
Right.
So you don't want to let your team down. You don't want to let your coaches down because you get used to seeing. The first time I saw stars was probably in the sixth grade. Like that's concussion. That's a concussion.
Right.
The first time you hear bells in your ears, like that all happened within my first year of playing tackle football. I'm in middle school. So,
Wow.
going to sleep on the field is like, yeah, it just wasn't,
It's
it makes you
crazy.
think about life though. It makes you
Yeah.
think, okay, you want to make sure your life is together.
Yeah. Did your mom ever express any type of fear or concern about you
Oh yeah.
playing football?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, my grandpa who raised me told me this is a great story. He never came to a football game, but he came to my graduation in college.
Wow. What?
But he didn't like me playing football. He said I was too small to play football, but my mom, it was hard for her to watch
Sure.
football. It
Yeah.
was just hard for her to watch me. But Little League, when I lived with her, she was definitely there, but it was hard. She was the first person on the field from stories that they've told me. She was
Oh,
the
I
first
bet
person
she
on the field,
was.
hopped the fence.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
can see that now.
Yep.
Um, that's really I think people forget about that aspect of sports and just the toll it takes on, especially I think the mothers.
Yep.
Um,
She still
uh,
has that jersey.
oh, she kept the jersey they cut off of you?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. She still has it.
So let's talk about you get through college and you graduate, and what are your thoughts then about the NFL, about the draft, about that whole process?
So I graduated in 4 years with that business degree. So I had another year. So I got into grad school. And I just remember a bunch of football players and GAs were in this master's program that they said, hey, it'd be a good fit for you. My uncle, Curtis, who's the vice president of student affairs at Xavier in Louisiana, he was like, man, I think you'd be a great fit in higher ed. I'm going to go over here and
Right.
talk to these people, but I'm going to the NFL. Like
Right, right.
and so I went over there and they interviewed me and they were like, yeah, Brandon, if you want to be in a program, you be in a program. I will accept you. We'll waive your GRE requirements. I was like, oh yeah, this is it for me.
And what was the program exactly?
Master's in college student personnel or higher
Okay.
education.
Okay.
Yep. And so I finished out my senior year, but during my senior year, I started meeting with teams. They show up to the complex. I remember meeting with several NFL teams and the Edmonton Eskimos, and I was like, I'm not going to Canada, but thanks for coming. But so then my senior year, I get some accolades and things like that, and it's it's your pro day, season. And I just remember going all in. I think I did 7 pro days
Wow.
or combines. So I did a pro day in Houston, Texas. And then I got invited to New Jersey for like their top. This was with East Preps. So it was like the top D2 and D3 players. So I was the number one player, D2, D3, um, and I got invited there and was number one amongst the 300. And then came back and did my pro day at Arkansas Tech. We had like, I don't know, 15 NFL teams there. From there, I got invited to another in-state pro day at another school because a couple of teams wanted to look at me again. So I went there. And then I got invited to the NFL Super Regional, which is a subset of the NFL Combine.
Okay.
So I got invited to Orange County, California.
Yes.
Um, it was 600 athletes out there.
Oh my God.
First time in California. And I was went through the combine, and out of 600, 16 DBs got selected. So I was in there for like outside linebacker DB,
Right.
and 16 out of the 600 athletes in total. Um, so you had DBs, linebackers, and all that. But I got selected to go to the Detroit Lions Stadium to try out in front of all 32 NFL teams, and that was really cool. And
Mhm.
then you come back, and I think by that time it's probably still late March,
Right.
early April. The draft hadn't got there, and then the NFL lockout hits.
What year is this? 2011?
2011.
2011.
So
You
yeah,
know, we've had a couple of other basketball players who were going into the NBA draft when they had their lockout. And it just kind of diverted their career too. How did that make you feel at that time for that to happen?
sucked.
Yeah.
I just remember I was depressed for sure. Um, staring, staying up, staring at the wall. So at this point, so the NFL draft, they allow it late, and I just remember watching the entire draft and listening to my agent. Oh, you're going undrafted. Don't go. So I don't go undrafted, and then the lockout resumes after the draft. And my uncle, the one who said, "Oh, we think you'll be good in higher ed. I think you should do that." He was at Wagner College in New York City at that point. He was like,
Mhm.
"Come up here and train and intern for me while you wait to go to the NFL." I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna come up here, but I'm going to the NFL." And I went up there and trained, but I was like an orientation intern for him,
Mhm.
and just never got that call when the lockout lifted. And I just remember staring at my phone. I remember every day everyone asking me, "Have you got the call yet? Have you got a call yet?"
Yeah.
And that call never came. And I was just like, wow, like
When
this.
did when did it set in? Because I've asked other former athletes this too. When did it set in that that call is just not going to come and you've got to do something else? Like,
or
how
the
long did that
or the
take? When,
call that you want is not going to come. I mean,
yeah.
I had options in terms of Canada and
Oh,
things
yeah.
like that, and I just did not want to do that.
Sure.
My dad made a comment to me. So he came to my pro day, and out of all the athletes that there was probably 15, 20 of us. They invited all the teams invited me upstairs, right? They
Right.
invited me upstairs to interview me and test me with the Wonderlic. um, so I just remember my dad, he took me out to eat after my pro day, and he was like, son, I said, "Pops, why didn't you do more in the NFL?" And he was just like, I just remember him saying, "When it's over, it's over. Like when it's over, you'll know it's over."
Right.
And when lockout did not, when it lifted and I didn't get that call, I just remember being like, "It's over.
Right.
Like I have to do something else." But the way God worked, I was already doing something else.
Sure.
So I'm grateful for that. But yeah, I remember staying up, not being able to sleep, like not working out. Like that was so different for me. Like just being miserable. For
Right.
about 3 to 6 months, I was miserable.
Right.
Uh,
Who helped you get through that period in time?
Thankfully, I was away. I was in New York City, so I was like interning in New York City. So I had work to do.
Hmm.
Um, my fiance at that time was great. She was supportive of me. She's my wife now, but yeah, she helped me through all of that. And I had some really good spiritual mentors who
Right.
also played football in college, who were preachers and mentors of mine. And then ultimately, my uncle was like, "Hey, you're going to have a great career outside of football." I have no doubt in that. It just sucked big
Yeah.
time, but I definitely had a great support system in my professors. Like they all knew
Right.
what I was trying to do, and to have to return from New York City to finish the masters was humiliating. So yeah, it was. They actually hired me as a graduate assistant and just Um, it was a humbling moment in my life for sure, but a lot of great people supported me.
You know, it's always easier after the fact to kind of look back and see how fortunate you are and how blessed you were in certain situations for anybody. It's harder in that moment. And I think, you being in ahead of the career center at UAB, um, I try to, because I work with a lot of mid-level professionals who are in job search, who've, especially, I lived in Houston, so I worked with a lot of oil and gas engineers. And it's so hard to motivate people when they're in the middle of it.
Right.
Um, what do you tell people or college students now? What do you tell them when they're in the middle of something like that? What words of encouragement do you give to them?
You know, I think it also depends on everybody. You have to cater your message to the
Mm,
student, right? But
sure.
I think it's important for them to realize that you got to continue to take active action. Like
Right.
you can't sit back and wait for things to happen for you in the midst of it. So when it's raining, you got to turn your windshield wipers on.
It's a
You
good
know, when you hear
analogy.
the tornado sirens, you need to make sure you're
Right.
able to take cover. And if you see a fire, you need to make sure you're putting water on it, right?
Right.
So you don't just let it burn down. You don't just let it flood. You don't just allow for the situation to overwhelm you. So make sure you stay active in your pursuit. So whether that means continue to read up on it,
Right.
continue to network, um, continue to apply, continue to take those interviews, take the job interviews that with the organizations that you don't think are a good fit for you, because you'd be shocked to realize their values might align.
Right.
And it's hard. Right? I often encourage folks to look at every kind of situation like these are hurdles on a track, right? Even if you don't know how to run track and you see a hurdle, you know getting over that first hurdle is going to be hard. But the more you practice that, the easier it's going to become.
Sure. Sure.
So don't realize that the challenge is only a challenge because you're not used to it.
Right.
When you become used to it, you get a little bit stronger. So just be willing to be patient, continue to take action, and ultimately your goals will come to pass. But and then also realize that what you think was gonna be might
Right.
not look like it
That's
might
right.
not look
That's
like
right.
what you
That's
had
right.
imagined, right? I can imagine working in higher education. Nobody could have told me that I was going to be doing this back in 2012. Um,
Especially as a football player, I think, or any type of athlete. I think that that would probably be the farthest thing from your mind.
no, yeah, I was a graduate assistant for our football team, and that got old quick. That got old quick. So I think, in the midst of those trying situations, what I did have were those people that encouraged me to keep on kind of developing an identity outside of football, which was
Right.
super hard, and being able to have conversations as a human being and not an athlete.
Right.
But they embraced it. They encouraged me, and I'm forever grateful for sure.
So let's talk about you said it was like 3 to 6 months after that that was really hard. What was the turning point for you that you think?
I just remember, I think I had went to one more tryout, and I think it was in like Houston. It was like CFL teams there.
Right.
And so I was already in like the second year, and they were like, "Hey, there's some teams in Houston. Get you some pads from the facility and get your helmet, go down there." And I just remember meeting a guy there, Sandy, um, having a conversation, another athlete. And turns out he's like 28 and he has four children. And I'm like, "You're 28 and you
Yes.
have four kids and you're still trying to go to the NFL, you need to get a job." Like this was my that was my first response. Like, there's no way I'm gonna be like this. Like I am more than a football player. Like
Right.
And to be honest, Sandy, when I went to Detroit Lions Stadium for the NFL Super Regional Combine, I remember meeting Division 1 FBS athletes that were like, if I don't play football, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
I didn't know exactly what I was gonna do, but I knew I was gonna do something. Like whether it was, I hadn't even thought about the Marines at that point, but I knew it was an option for
Right.
me. So
Right.
I think I always knew like I would be okay if I didn't play football. Um, but I'm a pretty ambitious individual,
Yeah.
so wanted to make that happen.
At UAB, do you have any conversations with the athletes there?
Yeah, yeah. So
Right.
I work with our UAB athletics department. I'm the liaison with the career center. So I work
Okay.
with the 350 athletes we have here.
Which I think is a perfect thing for you to be
I
able to
enjoy
do
it.
that. Yeah. A couple of questions and then we're going to be done. What do you think your biggest value is to others now?
I think at this juncture in my life, I just really am passionate about making sure people succeed.
Hmm.
And I'm so grateful that I am in a predicament where I can run into somebody and I can make something happen on their behalf, right?
Right.
I
Right.
can I can connect somebody with an oil company. I can connect somebody with a bank.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
or I can review your resume so that you're not getting the ugly emails, right? So I think the value that I add to any organization is like I'm here to, just make sure that the organization it has effective leadership, and I
Hmm.
think I offer a different frame on what that looks like from my athletic experience for sure.
Right. Right. Um, Now let's think about this. I'd like to know, what would you tell, let's say, an 8-year-old little Brandon who just got finished, like out there looking for turtles. What would you tell an 8-year-old Brandon? What advice would you give him?
Um, that's a really good question.
And it was
Uh,
on your
yeah,
it was
8-year-old
on your
Brandon, I
sheet.
think it's going to be okay, right? I think I was really nervous moving from my grandpa's
Sure.
house to my mom's house,
Exactly.
and I was, you know, moving with some folks that I mean, I knew my siblings, but I did. So
Right.
I think I would tell him like it's gonna be okay. Um, you're gonna have some fun with your brothers and your sisters, and you're gonna see a lot, but
Right.
it's gonna be okay. You'll be fine.
um I absolutely agree with that. And this has been another interesting story. I think I told you that every person we've had on here has had a different story, and it's really been fascinating to hear about, their upbringing and how that parlayed into their professional career. And everybody's career ended at a different time. When do you think your career officially ended?
Oh yeah, I mean, probably 2012 for sure.
Right.
I knew I wasn't going to be trying out for anybody else, and that's when I first got my first higher ed job in 2012.
Um, Yes, it's sometimes sometimes it happens quickly and sometimes it happens over a long period of time, and I'm not sure which way is even better, if there is a better way. If it's like pulling the Band-Aid off quickly or pulling it off slowly, and that kind of thing.
I'm either a all in or a I'm all out type. So,
Thank you so much for being on the show today. As we come to the end of this episode of the Fifth Quarter Podcast, thank you for listening, sharing our episodes, and your comments and show reviews. We appreciate each and every one of you and all of your support. As we wind down, I want you to remember to connect with the show on social media at 5THQRT Podcast. You can also find us at fifthquarterpodcast.com. That's 5TH quarterpodcast.com. And you can find me on Instagram at official Sandy Adams and on LinkedIn as well. I'm going to put Brandon's, all of his social media, which I think is LinkedIn and your website, I'm going to put that in our show notes so you guys can go and follow him and connect with him, and follow him at UAB. So, Brandon, thank you again so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. Until next time, remember, change is our ally and it paves the way for greatness. Stay inspired. Have a great rest of the week.